Hello, this is the brief lecture that I've been promising you about social presence. I'm just going to show you a few slides and talk to you a little bit about social presence and what it might mean, and then describe an activity that I want you to engage in prior to our next class. Okay, so when I think about teaching, I really think about the social aspect of both teaching and learning. It is thrilling to me at the beginning of a semester to walk into a classroom and to meet the students and to find out some about them by looking at them and hearing their tone of voice and as I'm talking to see people being engaged and the ways in which students impact each other. I love that. I love that kind of interactive part about teaching. And so, as we talked about in class last week or 2 weeks ago, one of the dilemmas about online education is how can we really preserve um, that important interactive element when we are doing online teaching. And so I think it's really important for us to consider, and I think social presence is a big part of it. In the article, one of the articles that you read for class last week, I believe it was written by Dunlap, they talked about a community of inquiry model in which that was first developed, was developed to some extent, the idea of social presence and some of these elements prior to Garrison's work in 2000. But in 2000, Garrison and colleagues wrote about this model that is really based on the idea of the importance of community and interaction and connection as part of learning in online in online settings. And there are three elements that are talked about: social presence, teaching presence, and cognitive presence. And I'll say more about that in a minute. And so as part of this model, what's really essential is the idea of community and collaboration really being an essential part of learning. That through community, we can challenge biases that we have and have different ideas about what may or may not be true. We can find new ways of viewing the world, both by what is the information that we're getting, but also hearing from and interacting with others. And I think for me, it's often an idea, an important thing in my own learning and in my own teaching is a way of the testing ground for articulating ideas. And that's a really important part of being part of a community as we learn. One of the things that I like about this model, and something that I absolutely believe, and we talked about it a little bit in class last time, is about the ways in which everybody in the class are both teachers and learners, that roles are shared. It's not we have one instructor and everybody else is the student. That's just not how it goes. That both teachers have, hopefully, I think good ones, are able to be students, and good students are able to be both learners and teachers. And so I really like this quote about the community of inquiry model. It's one in which students listen to one another with respect, build on one another's ideas, challenge one another to supply reasons for otherwise unsupported opinions, assist each other in drawing inferences from what has been said, and seek to identify one another's assumptions. And so you can see in this quote the ways in which students or learners are both taking in information, but also absolutely impacting the learning of other people who are part of the community. So once again, here is a picture of the model to kind of remind you about the three different elements. And I really want to, the one that I'm going to focus on is the one, oopsie, right here, the green one, which is social presence. And that's the one that we'll be talking about teaching presence and cognitive presence as we move through the semester. But right now, today, I want our focus to be on social presence, and it's the one that is important to me. And I think about, when I think about social presence, I think about what happens in live classrooms when I walk in the room and I start talking, and there is a sense, okay, the instructor's here, class is beginning. There is a sense we're all ready to learn, we're all ready to be part of this community. And I think about the change in the students when it's clear, okay, I'm here and we're going to start this process. But then I also think about the change in me when a student withdraws in one way or another, when they open up their laptop and start looking at Pinterest or whatever they're doing, and how that impacts me. And so I really think this social presence, or the presence of both teacher and learner, it's so reciprocal, and hopefully we can think about ways that we impact one another in terms of the presence, social presence. So this is a lot of information, and I just want to kind of take us through each one. The first thing I want to say is that the community of inquiry model is well thought of, and the most cited model when in terms of thoughts about online education. But there are some people, and there has been some research that shows conflicting results, or conflicting importance of social presence, and that some people think that maybe we don't need to have this kind of, that social presence isn't so important, and that that kind of reciprocity that is talked about is not so important. And so I'll leave it up to you to think about it further, and we'll talk about it more in class. But I want to talk about now social presence and what it is, and then, as I said, focus on a brief activity for you to do over the next couple weeks. So what's really interesting is if you look at the academic and research literature, there are really conflicting views of what we're talking about when we talk about social presence. It is not one thing, and everybody who is talking about it has their own little definition about that. And so some people might be talking about social presence, relationships. Relationships really important to education and really important to online education. So that may be social presence. And I think about, for me, what it means to me to be able to feel like I know my students and that I have some kind of interaction with them, and so the kind of relationships, to me, very, very important. Another element of social presence is the idea of being able to be real and to be seen as real, or being oneself. And for me, that is can be challenging in a lot of ways. I think about some of your introductions from the last class, and whether it be seeing you make music, or talking about yourselves and what's important to you, the being real, how helpful that is. And to me, that's about social presence. Another element of social presence is feeling like who I am uniquely is seen. And I think there can be times when I have a class of 70 students, and it's like name after name after name, and I think, who is this person uniquely? And I want to know that. And so the degree to which I can create activities that help students be their unique self, I think is important, as well as my being my unique self as part of the educational experience. Another element of social presence is just like being present, being there. And I think for me, what's really important in online education is making my presence known by inserting comments, and to interact with people and let them know that I'm actually alive and there, and that there's a person behind all of the stuff that they're doing. Another kind of social presence is sort of an awareness of the group, and where do I fit into the group, and to what extent am I similar or different from group members, and what is the goal? What are our goals as a group? What are we together trying to do in terms of learning material? A sense of feeling emotionally connected to the group. I think about both of my daughters in college. I've heard about it probably most from them, is the ways neither of them have taken online classes, but they talk about in live classes how they've made friends, and how it's been really an important part of the process for them in terms of that emotionally connected with other people. And so how can we create that in an online setting? And then last is collaboration, the sense of we're working together, and how can we create activities that, or a sense of collaboration in our work with students. So these are some of the different elements of social presence, and some of them may speak to you more than others, and I'll be curious to hear your thoughts about it. So what we're going to be doing over the next 2 weeks, hopefully you've had a chance now, you're watching this video and thinking about the idea of social presence and what it means to you. And so what I want you to do is I want you to pair up with a student from 8151. And so we'll probably have maybe 3 groups of one way or another. And so choose somebody that you would like to do this activity with. And then together, I want you to create an activity that you think will create a greater sense of connection and social presence in our group. So what is our goal? Our goal is to create a community that is focused on learning about being excellent online educators. I think that's our focus. Creating your classes, continuing to develop your own skills as educators overall, but online educators. And so I want you to create an activity that you think will create a greater sense of connection and social presence in our group with that goal in mind. You can use whichever element of social presence that most speaks to you, the ones that I just mentioned. And then after you create the activity, let me know, send it to me, or figure out what we need to do so we can create a space for it on the Canvas site. I would like to have all of the activities in a week. So if you can create it in a week, that would be great. If that doesn't seem reasonable, we'll talk about it in class on Tuesday and you let me know. We'll have a different date. But ideally, I'd like to have it done. You have them to me in a week's time. And then I want everyone to engage in the other social presence activities that they have not created prior to class on April 2nd. So we'll talk about this briefly in class, and I'll answer questions that you have. Feel free to contact me in the meantime with any questions, and I am very, very excited to think about what you're going to be doing as we continue to develop a sense of cohesion and community as we work to become better online educators. Thanks.